When the farm laws were passed in September 2020, you can see its details in my video, episode 22, titled Listen to the Farmers. Little did one realize that it would trigger off a nationwide protest. However, when the farm bills, were released in 2017, there were widespread but localized protests in different states including Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Punjab and Haryana, among others. Even in the northeast, some states like Assam, I believe there were protests. So, after the bills became laws in September 2020, one had expected at best token protests by political parties and some farmers' unions. Nobody had expected such a strong unity and unified protest later on. Anyway, although peaceful, the farmers' protests have turned into a massive movement now. Perhaps the largest ever in the history of independent India. Thousands and thousands, in fact, some people say lakhs of farmers had, hundreds of thousands of farmers had come to the borders of Delhi as part of the protest. Farmers from Punjab, Haryana, and western Uttar Pradesh came in tractors and camped on the borders of Delhi with Singhu, Tikri, and Gazipur as hotspots. And there were also reports that representative groups of farmers from other states had also come, like from Maharashtra and perhaps Karnataka and Assam too. They had also joined this movement on the Delhi borders. Again, one thought that given the fact that more than 40 farmers' unions have formed this coalition, sooner or later the internal dissensions would wreck the movement. Because there was a lot of diversity even in the approach to the movement, and in the beginning at least. Others thought that farmers might get tired of the satyagraha and disperse. No, I mean, it was too prolonged and there was winter, severe winter, and many thought that they would ultimately leave the sites of the protest. But that did not happen. They stayed on. In fact, the numbers kept increasing at a rate that must have alarmed the central government. Soon, rumors of infiltration by ISI, Khalistanis, even Chinese agents began to spread. Who was spreading it and what was their intention, we do not know, but lots of media outlets talked about this infiltration, calling them Chinese agents, etc., etc., etc. That is, I think, now a familiar reaction from certain known familiar quarters. However, this peaceful movement, which was absolutely Gandhian in its character, suddenly ended in violence and chaos with demands for calling off the protest gathering momentum. These demands came more from without than from within. To some extent, tenuous as it might be, it somehow reminded at least me of the Chauri Chaura incident of 4 February 1922 that forced Mahatma Gandhi to call off the civil disobedience movement. As we all know, the movement was launched on 4 September 1920, demanding Purna Swaraj or complete independence. The Chauri Chaura incident happened when the police opened fire on the demonstrators. The angry crowd retaliated by setting fire to the police station. Overall, 3 civilians and 22 policemen had died in that violence. But the similarity is not exactly the same now, because here a group of young farmers who provoked violence, and the police resorted to lathi charge to discourage the spread of violence. At least that is the general opinion. Although many media outlets have said that it was the police who attacked the farmers first. Be that as it may, Gandhian Satyagraha type of this protest turned violent on the morning of 26 January when a group of farmers broke through the barricades 4 hours before the permitted time and marched towards Delhi. Now, who guided these people to do this? Who asked these people to do this? The ensuing violence led to the death of at least one person, and several hundred were wounded. Among them, 394 were policemen. Now, it is of only academic interest whether the violence was spontaneous or pre-planned. What needs to be understood is the consequences of the violence. It has considerably weakened the fervor among farmers. Their bargaining power too has reduced now. The repealing of the farm laws now appears impossible. The government was, the government was adamant that they won't repeal the farm laws, and with this violence erupting, now they are only going to become more stubborn about it. At one time, the protest had put the central government on the back foot, and this we all know. That was the reason why they seemed desperate to come to an agreement with the protesting farmers. While most of the farm leaders have distanced themselves from the violence in a desperate bid for damage control, many others have put forward alibis to the violence. According to them, the agreement between the police and farmers on the timing and route for the tractor march was arrived at very late in the day, just about 24 hours earlier. This was not enough for the 40 leaders to spread the information to all the protesting farmers, which created confusion, which led to the 8 a.m. start of the march, when actually it should have been at 12 noon. This alibi may be true, but how do they justify the permitting of provocative statements from the podium of the where the farmers had collected? There was a stage, and where many people were giving speeches, etc. And on that podium, some young farmers, or supposedly leaders, who were not really part of the mainstream 40 unions, they indicated their plans to not honor the agreement. Then there are also some conspiracy theorists who assert that BJP had planted troublemakers among the protesting farmers. They point out to the fact that more than 99% of the farmers remained peaceful throughout. Just a handful actually triggered the violence. Were these agents provocateurs or genuine farmers? This nobody knows. Some of the names of these so-called planted troublemakers floating around are Deep Sidhu Jugraj Singh, who is seen in a video climbing up a pole and installing Nishan Sahib at the Red Fort. Lakha Sadhana, Sarvan Pandher, and Satnam Singh Pannu. Their provocative speeches incited the hotheads among the farmers on the morning of 26 January. The extent of violence does indicate that the leaders of protesting farmers were not in full control of the movement. Frankly, even the police seemed at a loss of wits vis-a-vis the unfolding situation. This is where the Ministry for Home Affairs needs to be held to account. They must have had prior intelligence of such a mischief. If not, then they are either inefficient or complicit. Amit Shah, who was so vocal during the Shaheen Bagh protests, suddenly went mute. No talk of sending electric shocks to the protesters' camps. Rakesh Tikat's tearful protests apparently brought back many farmers to Ghaziabad, Tikri, and Singhu. Those who were leaving, they returned. But will the gathered protesters have the same effect as earlier? Haven't they lost their leverage with the government? The leaders are trying to rejuvenate the protest by underscoring their Gandhian credentials by observing fast on 31st January as tribute to Mahatma Gandhi. But the raising of Nishan Sahib at the Red Fort has done immense damage already, as it definitely looked like an attempt to hijack the movement to serve sectarian interests. The movement is actually secular and issue based, which cuts across religion, region, caste, and class. From a socio-economic movement, a politico religious color has been added. However, many have justified this act by harking back to history. When Sikhs under Baba Baghel Singh had captured the Red Fort in 1783, they assert that Sikhs have always perceived Delhi as the seat of repressive regimes and invariably refer to it as the Delhi Darbar. But surely one cannot condone this medieval mindset. How can you resolve the issues of 21st century with an 18th century mindset? The very fact that a majority of Sikh farmers have condemned the extremist elements like Sidhu, Sadhana, Pannu, Pandher, and others shows that they have no separatist agenda. Clearly, these mischievous fellows were facilitated to do whatever they did at the Red Fort by powerful political forces that have their own sinister agendas. You just cannot enter the fort in such huge numbers with the policemen running helter skelter. The scenario of the Red Fort somehow attracts comparisons with the insurrectionist mobs that had showed up at Trump's behest and stormed the US Capitol. USA's disruptive forces like white supremacists and adherents of the QAnon myth were quite visible in that incident. Are these alleged Khalistani elements the Indian equivalent of QAnon believers? I don't believe in it. I don't think so. There is any parallel. India is on the verge of reviving its economy, and it is also fighting a serious battle with the threats from Wuhan virus and Chinese military. It is time for some genuinely sane steps. Surely, repeating the Shaheen Bagh formula of sending in hired goons who actually claimed to be locals in this case to destroy farmers' tents and property while shouting nationalist slogans is not the right way. It is counterproductive as it is bound to alienate further one of the most vibrant and patriotic segments of our society. It is equally unwise to charge journalists like Rajdeep Sardesai, Mrinal Pandey, etc., and intellectuals like Shashi Tharoor with sedition just because they do not agree with the government. We need to realize that this movement is not sectarian but national in character. It does not belong to any particular region or community. Farmers are spread throughout this country. They belong to different castes, creeds, etc., regions, languages, ethnic groups, whatever you want to call it. They are not a homogeneous group, and they are certainly not a small section. They, in fact, form the largest part of Indian population. Their movement involves social issues with ramifications for the entire country. The farmers' leaders too must become wary of infiltrators, and they must clearly condemn and boycott all those who raised Khalistani and pro-Bhindranwale slogans at the protest sites. Let us not forget that on 26 January, a huge car rally was taken out in USA, UK, Canada, and some other countries. And these rallies were conducted by Khalistanis. These people are being openly backed by Pakistan. This is a dangerous trend which only we can halt by remaining united and by respecting our compatriots. We should stop calling them names. We will always have our differences, but that is no reason to call each other as traitors, terrorists, or anti-nationals. You don't become anti-national just because you don't agree with the actions, certain actions of the government of the day. It's a democratic country. We have the right to differ even with the government of India on certain issues. And it's not one-way traffic. On their part, the government and the opposition parties must join hands to resolve this issue as speedily as possible and resist the temptation to play politics. More than individual egos are at stake. Thanks for being with me. I'll come back with another episode soon. Bye till then.